It's time for our panel discussion, so can I invite panel members to join us?
Go for it.
So while people are making their way to the stage, I'm going to do a few introductions. I'm sure most of the people are familiar to you, but taking her seat just at the moment, Callum MacDonald, HP Associate Director in Fife. Next to her, Fiona McQueen, Chief Nursing Officer for Scottish Government. At the far end, Jenny Miller, Chief Executive of PAMIS, an organisation that's known to many of the people in the room. And Graeme Ellis, who is our National Clinical Lead at Healthcare Improvement Scotland for older people and frailty. And last but not least, I'm going to now hand over to Henry Simmons, Chief Executive of Alzheimer's Scotland, who's going to chair the panel. Over to you.
I'll do that from here if that's okay. Good afternoon, colleagues. It is afternoon. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I think from my perspective, I've really enjoyed all the presentations, but this part I've been looking forward to it, and I hope you are too, because it gives us a chance to put people under real pressure of intense questioning. And we won't use any other techniques other than intense pressure in questioning, but I think to get going, if I could ask people just sort of to think about any questions that you want to ask. There's lots of tables here, and we'll try and get as many questions in as possible. What we'll do is to get things warmed up, we'll put everyone on the spot and perhaps just start at the end, if you don't mind. Yeah? And like we've got a question that's part of the programme, but I mean, to summarise that question, so what needs to happen? What's the barriers, the blocks? What's not allowing us to create this shift? And if perhaps each of you could just give us a view for a moment or two on your sort of top headlines before we get into the questions. Okay. Jen, you okay to start?
Oh, okay. Yeah, can you hear me? We talk about people with a profound learning disability, but when we talk about profound, we mean deep, and we mean wise, and we mean expert, and we mean that actually they're some of our best educators. And I think if we accept that people with profound learning disabilities that often don't communicate in the way that we think they need to communicate, and their family carers are absolute experts, if we recognise that, then I think we've got real opportunity to really learn in a very different way. And then, I mean, I just love that last talk about thinking differently, thinking about how we co-produce and how we learn together. And if we give that information, I mean, we've got an example in postural care, you give that information to family carers, they co-train with therapists. Suddenly they're translating all that information, and then they are 100% of the time going back and putting it into place. I think we need to think differently about how we work as partners.
Great, so thinking differently. Books and mics. Yeah.
So I think as healthcare professionals we're very good at problem solving and treating people and jumping to the right answer and the fix. I don't think we're as good at asking people what matters to them. So we know that people need to lose weight and that they need to exercise more in order to try and stop this freight train that is type 2 diabetes and other chronic conditions. But what we're not so good at is actually asking people what matters to them. And it may very well be that using every healthcare contact as a health improvement opportunity is a start, but actually if somebody turns around and says to you, well actually I know I should be losing weight and doing more exercise, but I'm about to be made homeless on Friday because of circumstances. And then you think, okay, right, and if you don't know then how to continue that conversation around the housing issue, you stop the conversation and you prevent it from happening. And I think another reason that we don't use every healthcare contact as a health improvement opportunity, and one of our staff in Fife said it to me, he said, but Carlin, look at me, I can't have a conversation with somebody with the way I look. So I said, well what are you doing about your health and well-being in order to try and change that and stop using your issues as an excuse not to have a conversation with people. So I think for me it's about what matters to you conversation, rather than us being the quick fix saying, oh, we've got a weight loss program next door, because actually that may not be what matters to the individual.
I think all of the above, but there's something about thinking differently, and we expect people who use our services to be different and to change. And for me, the real challenge, but an opportunity for us now, is to look at things almost upside down and inside out. So we need the 1,000 flowers blooming. So we need individual practitioners doing what needs to be done, and we need to do it in quite a different way. And that can be a challenge because it's often easier for people to be fixed rather than to take their own health and well-being into their own hands. And I think there's something about whole system. So how do we systematically as a society, actually from a policy perspective, make that shift so that across society, whether it's within IJBs, whether it's within families, we can then join the dots and make sure that we can actually help people come to that right decision. And I think the information about the life curve is fascinating, because my sense is if people know that earlier on in their lives, then they will be able to take informed decisions about that. But that's probably not necessarily for AHPs to do. That's a whole system policy issue. So it's how do we then get the expertise and the enthusiasm and the knowledge that allied health professions have and capitalise on that and make it real, make it work.
Thanks for that. Okay.
So when I was a medical student, the worst place to be was the last one in the group answering the questions, because all the good ones had already been taken. I think there's a who, a what, and a how to some of this. And in terms of the who, I think we've got to be intervening before the life curve even starts. It's got to be a public health issue, and that means that from a government and society point of view, we've got to change people's behaviours. I'm feeling smug because I've been for my run this morning, but I think that doesn't just require government to intervene. I think that requires us to model the behaviours we expect to see, and that will be tough. I think there's also the what. I think there's the questions around not just about modelling behaviours, but the first time you see someone is an opportunity not just to deal with what's in front of you, but beyond that. And we've talked predominantly about physical health issues, but actually mental health, psychological and cognitive health, all these other issues also need addressed. So we need to be ambitious at every interaction around dealing with that. And I think in terms of the how, I think we need to challenge ourselves about the way we practice. We need to be more radical. And that means that we may need to look at our roles. We may need to explore things like role blurring, whether if you're the best placed person to deal with someone, are you able to take a message to them on my behalf, and can I do that on your behalf, and how are we exploring that way of working? We did a little bit of working just on surgical pre-assessment, just picking up on that analogy earlier on. We assessed people prior to elective surgery, and interestingly the occupational therapist manager who was involved in the project started doing assessments prior to admission and entirely remodeled the way that their workforce works around the surgical admissions, and completely cost neutral because she was no longer needing to intervene afterwards. But also we were seeing less cancelled surgery, less complications after surgery. Folks were, the length of stay had dropped. So being able to challenge the way you do things can have kind of effects that you can actually measure yourself.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, that's the panel warmed up. Oh, and you're right off the mark. That's excellent. We have some roving mics. What we'll do is I'll take 2 or 3 questions at a time. If you want to just tell me who you're particularly interested in answering the question, we'll do our best, yeah? And we'll try and get as many in as we possibly can before we go to the panel. So you just give us your first question.
So I'm Philip Rowe from the University of Strathclyde. I think that we should congratulate Jackie and Sarah on going out and consulting the public and coming back with a plan that is bigger than the AHP. So, it's the Active and Independent Living programme. They've identified what the AHPs can do for that role. My question is, as everyone said, it's a collective. This has to be a collective. So what is going to be the response from other sectors of healthcare and social work to this plan?
Yeah, great. So what's the response? Anyone else got a... Yeah, on you go. Yeah, it was nice and easy for you.
I'm Jackie Morris from Dundee University. I'm interested in what you were saying about the need for people to change behaviours, but changing behaviours is extremely complex, and there's a whole big evidence base around that. And I'm just wondering whether we feel that we're actually equipped as allied health professionals and public health practitioners to do that in an effective way. And I think that should be perhaps built in to how we how we adapt and adopt this programme. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. Well, that's two questions we'll get started. So, looking at what other areas of the sector are going to do and how we can influence that, and then looking at how behaviour change. Fiona, do you want to kick off in terms of other areas of the sector? Give it quite a big, obviously, scope within that. What's your thoughts on that first question?
So I think it's joining the dots. So there are areas ripe for change and for making things happen. I think if you look at what's happening across other sectors, and we've got an opportunity with integrated joint boards, community planning partnerships to really take that whole system approach and support it. But it requires leadership, and it requires leadership across the whole public sector, and the government is certainly looking at doing that at the moment. But it's not just the public sector, it's the private sector as well, so that we can take that forwards. And at all levels across society, whether it's within professions or within other organisations, we're needing then to be able to coalesce around that. So be intentional about what's happening, make decisions, so that it's not pulling in different ways. And that, I think, often service users can say, it's fine being worthy and intentional, but actually there's nothing there for us to engage with. Either the services haven't modernised and changed. So I think it's about leadership across the whole public sector. I think it's about us all taking our place and recognising and knowing and acknowledging what our part to play is in that. And I absolutely agree, if we're allowed to talk about education, I think as part of this we will clearly need to look at career frameworks, and what would a traditional career framework be, what would a career framework in the new world be like, because it needs to be different, and what education from a postgraduate point of view do we need to have.
That's great, Phil. So Graham, how do we get other medics on the path to enlightenment then? what's the barriers there? How do we spread this across other doctors, shall we say?
Okay, so talking about impossible now, I think.
I've got to come back to that. It's really important, but yeah.
So I think it's really important that this isn't just held by medics. I think that this is everybody's responsibility, and I couldn't overemphasise that. I was thinking across the public sector, if you took that as a workforce, the number of people who could be agents of change in terms of public health, encouraging activity, better diet, and be informed, is enormous. And actually, I kind of thought what we need to do is get the hairdressers involved, because if you're in the hairdresser getting your hair done, as you can see I am regularly, but in terms of some of my patients, if they're in for 45 minutes, you've got a captive audience, so you can talk to them about their health and their diet. So in terms of medics, I think, it's not a challenge I've fixed yet. So I think the issue is that as a workforce, I think we are to some degree keen to be put out of work. I would think we would love to see more people who are active, independent and well, and that the demand that comes to the point at which we're involved lessens. I do think that medics need to take their ownership of the responsibility for prevention and for upstream intervention and education, and I think need to be much more collaborative, if I'm honest. Not an easy task.
Yeah. Did you want to say something
I'd
about
like
that,
to say
Jen?
something. I think that there's some really exciting work going on at Dundee University with undergraduate programmes. So thinking about how we train that next generation. I mean, we're really excited. We've got an occupational therapy student with us today who's working in the voluntary sector alongside teaching students, medical students, nursing students and social work students. And together, because our guys are so complex, they're understanding that nobody's got the right answer. And I think if we can get in at an undergraduate level and think differently, and the people that are left picking it all up are some of our social care, paid social care workers who are doing the best that they can, but with really limited support and supervision and training. And actually, within allied health professionals, we are forever in the third sector asking you to come and talk to us about what we need to do around communication, helping us with postural care, thinking about all the skills that you have that you need to give this workforce who are just doing the best that they can on their, as we heard on the news, 15 minutes a day. I think if we can get in at undergraduate level and really change, that's how we will change it. And I have to just say, the next generation are fabulous. We've had the most amazing students. There's my OT student.
And Carla, what's your thoughts in terms of that question of behaviour change and how we get that transformation being embedded?
So I think some services, some professions do it really well. I mean, we've heard a lot about MSK Physio today. They will always use their opportunity to, when they're seeing their patients, to have a conversation around health behaviour change. But I think people don't know what they don't know, and the Health Scotland website is a fabulous website that has got modules on health behaviour change, around having a brief intervention and a brief conversation around physical activity or smoking cessation. So I think if you haven't had any opportunity to have a look at the Health Scotland website, then please do so. But I think there's loads of resources out there, but people are a bit too busy being reactive, treating disease, and I think they need to prioritise, and it is really hard, and I know services have turned their services around by doing things differently, and they are doing far more around health promotion and early intervention, and health behaviour change is one of those things, and I would urge you to have a look at the modules on Health Scotland.
That's great, thanks very much. Can I just take a few more questions? If you want to take your hand up, you can go first and then you can go second. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Leslie Holdsworth. I work for the Scottish Government as a clinical lead for eHealth. I was very interested in, particularly from Peter's presentation, if anybody doesn't know, at the moment we're developing a new national digital health and care strategy, and the consultation is out at the moment. So I suppose my question to the panel, and I don't even mind if Peter has a bit of an input into this, is what would you like to see in that strategy that is going to compress disability into the future?
Okay. And just the second question from yourself.
Hi, my name is Graham McGee and I'm an improvement advisor with the Active and Independent Living Improvement Programme just now. My question is really a comment and a question. It's building on Kevin's fantastic presentation this morning and also picking up on what Fiona alluded to about that whole systems change, and it's about how important it is for us to make the connections with education, in particular in the early years, because I'm just thinking, probably because my daughter's in primary teaching just now, but some of the issues that Kevin highlighted need to be picked up in primary education, and it's maybe not a health issue, but if they're not picked up and there's not that support, there's not that funding for additional support at that level, so we've got a role to influence it, but it's how do we tie all that into what we're trying to achieve?
So we change the whole part of it. Yeah, great. What was your perspective in terms of digital health and the strategy and sort of like in response to the first question?
So I'm very keen on. So obviously I'm coming from the realm of old people with frailty and looking very much at. So there you go. There goes my smartwatch. Telling me to stand, probably, actually. Looking at how we can keep them independent, keep them well, and keep them out of institutions and keep them out of care. I think what we would quite like to see is that we are smarter around recognising flags that are of concern, that are visible to all the relevant agencies involved in that person's care, that then connect them with what they should know, what they should do, whether it's low-level interventions or more complex interventions, to push people back up the curve into independent living. I'm coming from obviously from one end of the spectrum, but I think that smarter ways of identifying decline and addressing it across agencies is key.
Yeah, great. Anyone else want to comment on that?
I'll comment on digital strategy, because in fact we've got an extremely active group of allied health professions and a great number who have been through the NES NMAP e-health training. So a big thank you to NES for funding that for the last 7 or so years. I don't think we should be afraid to embrace digital, any digital solution for our ageing population, and not making an assumption that people who are old don't use technology, because that is not the case. we've developed a digital postcard in Fife around signposting people with early onset dementia to local services, and it has been really well received. So, and also don't be afraid that the kind of digital age is going to take away from the need for having your roles out there. I think it is to supplement your roles. So I would really urge you to engage in the whole digital strategy of the digital age, because you as you age and your peers around you age will be the future, and you're using digital. Loads of you are tweeting already. So don't be put off, and I would ask you to embrace it, because I think it is absolutely the way forward.
And in terms of the second question, Jenny, because you're working across the spectrum there, how can we get, really into education early, working with people is like, in a very different way from perhaps how we're perceiving things just now. Any thoughts in response to that?
I was really moved by Kevin's talk as well, and I think our family carers go through numerous traumas and so do people with profound and complex needs, but I don't think it's something we talk about or we understand. And quite often when we have families that come in very aggressively occasionally, I think we haven't accepted that they've been through so much trauma in loss and bereavement in the way that they move forward. I think it's really important that we pick that up. And actually we've just had teaching students on placement with us, and I think they're overwhelmed with what they're expected to cope with, and we really need to think about how we all have something to contribute. I would love it if we had these community schools where everybody met. Actually, there is now PhD research that says if you have coffee and cake together, you will form a better team. And wouldn't it be fabulous if we were all actually in that staff room working together and undressing some of these issues? Because I think, Rhea, you're absolutely right. It's so difficult for teachers to take that forward. And Kevin, you highlighted how if we don't get it at an early stage, what might happen in the longer term. But I sometimes think we're a little bit nervous about having those conversations and understanding that. And I think we need a lot of support in pre-registration. Probably back to your point, Jackie, about how we enable people to feel confident and comfortable.
That's great. Any comments to that question for you?
I mean, I'm always the optimist, and like everyone was very moved by Kevin's story. And I was wondering if that had happened today, what would happen? And I would hope that what would happen is if you put the politics and you put your thoughts about the named person aside, but actually the infrastructure we have to wrap around young people is much better. Even if you look at curriculum for excellence and the embracing health and well-being, there are more opportunities for people to wrap themselves around young people. Now we know that that's not always systematic, and we know that the resources perhaps at times aren't always there, but as the Cabinet Secretary just talked about earlier in terms of Mr Swinney's ambitions, and you can only have people attaining if they feel they can flourish and they're supported and they're nourished physically and emotionally. So I think there are issues there, but it's about human beings. So what works in one small community perhaps doesn't work in a big community, and that's where we need to take that whole system approach. And at times, if through cost saving people say, well, we're going to have to close buildings because it's hardly used, I think there is something that we all have that leadership responsibility to flag up the importance of community well-being and making a difference that's sometimes less tangible.
Okay, so we'll take some more questions, and perhaps like we've got a hand up, stick your hand up, but in the interim, yeah, back to yourself. Whilst we're getting to you, can I just ask the panel to have a think about this? I mean, if I'd say to everyone in this room, how many years have we known prevention and early intervention is the way to go? 20 years plus, perhaps? More than that? Yeah? Yet, we've not achieved it. Yeah? And we still want to achieve it, and we're making progress in it. Is the truth not that there's a really strong, immensely established power base there that doesn't want this? And that what we have to do is somehow find a way of tackling that more openly, and in a way that actually, challenges and calls people to the floor and the account and say, well, no, this is the way we're going. We've seen it in job design, job descriptions. We've seen this as a function clearly defined and the structure following that. Do you think we're there yet? Do you think we've made that open? Let's get this on the table and get it done, or do we still have to do that? I'll offer over to whoever wants to take that first of all. But any, yeah, cool.
I have to take it. I think we've still got loads to do. I think the power base is an interesting one in terms of money, influence, power, and I think that's gradually moving. I think there's something about the public's love affair of the hospital, and therefore I don't think it's just clinicians. I think it's a deeper societal issue about what it means and the fixing and our anxiety. If we're saying we are going to change, we're going to do things differently. But I believe we can do it. I remember when government policy was to close long-term mental health institutions, to close institutions caring for people with a learning disability. And nobody, well, there must have been one or two people in Scotland who thought it could be done, but on the whole, nobody thought it could be done. And it's been done, and people's lives are so much richer for it. So to be able to hold a nerve and have the confidence about actually we're going to move our occupational therapy and our physiotherapy and our nursing or whatever service out, and it's actually going to be done by the third sector. So we're going to change completely. It's tricky and it's a challenge because the public don't like it, and they say, because they don't understand it, and they say no, we want to keep our buildings and our people, and we want services. Even looking at other examples of when perhaps local authorities say we're going to stop providing a bus for children to go to school, we'll do it within the legal limit of 2 miles, and there's outrage at the children having to walk a mile to school. So we then have to build in the daily miles so that they actually get their exercise. So I think it's a societal issue. I think we're moving, and I think we need to take confidence in the fact that we've done it before and we're on our way.
Great. I'll get the lady's question.
My name is Jenny van Oostende and I work in Argyll and Bute as a health improvement specialist. And I was just wondering if there is any scope for increased inclusion of motivational interviewing health behaviour change training in universities and training institutions as part of their core training in communication skills. And while I recognise the really good work that NHS Scotland has done in their e-modules for brief interventions, I don't think it really replaces any of the face-to-face training where we look at the spirit of motivational interviewing, which is very much about collaboration and respect, empathy, but also working on the strengths that people have within themselves and building on that so that they can actually self-manage and be responsible. So my question is that is there any scope for an increased inclusion of the health behaviour change training?
Okay, and does anyone want to have a go at that?
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
I think
just
that-
yes.
yeah.
I think it's the answer here. Yeah.
Yeah, the answer is yes. That's very quickly.
Can I throw in an extra? So yes is obvious, and I did my thesis on trying to change behaviour through education and motivation for risk factors for stroke. It's quite a depressing thesis, really. It's challenging. I think the other thing is, alongside that, we need to look at all sorts of factors that start to provoke, stimulate and encourage change, because there are many different factors. There's no good reason not to get better at communicating, inspiring and encouraging. And I can't speak for other professions in terms of their training. Our training in communication skills was poor when I did it. It's got a lot better now, and it's now a key factor, but there's no good argument against making it better still.
Great, thank you.
Can I just add as well? I just think that the more that we do in involving the people that use services, the better it is as well, because I think then we begin to hear different messages and we understand each other in a different way. And I think that also feeds into that being brave, being brave about handing over a lot of your knowledge and information to those who really, really need it, but we need to translate that for them.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to look a bit wider. Anyone else got a question? A couple of questions? Lunch standing in the way, is it? Am I standing in the way of lunch? Okay, I'll keep going, this is great. Oh, there we go. Yeah, you go. It's a race for the mics. Great.
Hi, I'm Catherine Ross and I'm the National Workforce Development Lead for Scottish Care representing the independent sector. I'm interested in a comment that Peter made. We should be cooking with them, not for them. So to the panel, I would like to know what practical steps you would make in your positions to make sure that the situation is improved for older people in Scotland.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Carolyn, you want to have a go? You described some stuff earlier there.
So some of the practical steps we're doing in Fife certainly is that I'm on the Integrated Joint Board and I'm taking the opportunity to have some new conversations with councillors around this agenda, because I think when we in old money, when we were in an NHS box and social work was in a social work box in terms of council initiatives, I think we were very siloed. And there's a huge opportunity with health and social care integration to move forward the conversations in a much more collaborative way. So I'm using opportunities in terms of my role on the IJB about having conversations with the local councillors around the opportunities there are for doing much more work around the life curve. I've been raising these issues with our Director of Health and Social Care around early intervention, prevention and reablement, and how we need to do far more preventative reablement than reactive, which is what we've been doing. So certainly from my point of view, that's how I'm using the opportunities in my role to have those kind of new conversations.
Graham?
Yeah, the risk here is being brief. So I work in Lanarkshire, and in North Lanarkshire for some time they've been working with carers to do reablement rather than care for, so they've taken the approach of working with residents. Residents is the wrong word, but they got a bit of stick for that initially. I think it's quite hard to sort of change the assumptions around that, encouraging independence. In some of our what were previously long-term care wards, we've changed the way in which they're handled, and Claire Ritchie's here who did a lot of the work, so that nurses were working alongside but not doing for patients, enabling them to dress themselves, do stuff, including exercises in the day room, and changing the whole ethos of care in the ward. And the results for other outcomes like falls and long-term care placements were dramatic. I also work in hospital at home, so don't get me started on trying to avoid the institutional effects. But there's one example, just returning to your independent sector background, there's one example I came across in the Scandinavian care homes where the residents wash the dishes, and I thought that's a lovely idea. It may not be clean, but it's a lovely idea. My mother was in a wonderful care home, and she was a mother of 4 boys, so she was forever cleaning up. So really they would allow her to clean up, they would allow her to set 11 knives at each place at the table, and from our point of view that was wonderful. That was it wasn't tidy, but they allowed that kind of individual person to express themselves, to stay active, to stay vibrant. So I think there's a lot we could do actually across the spectrum.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes. I see we've got a question. If you can't put, I'll let you get to it. Yeah. Anyone else got a question? Just put your hand up. You don't need to answer this now, but if you're thinking about a question, give me a wee indication so I can scale this out. Okay, just go straight to yourself. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Morag Dorwood. I'm Allied Health Professional Lead for Children's Services in the NHS Tayside. Excuse me. And I'm picking up on partly where Greer was coming from earlier on, and Kevin's story, and the intergenerational cycle that we have, and needing to break it. I know not everybody in the room is very familiar with it, but if you can think of Kevin's story, and actually we need to be intervening across the life cycle to break that intervention, and it's a cultural change we're needing. And so there's kind of 2 parts to this, I suppose. So as an allied health professional community, what can we be doing across all of us in all care groups to help influence that culture change with the people that we're interacting with that every contact counts bit, not just make it a physical health thing. And the other part is how can we work with our communities to help them to change their expectations and understanding of how we want to work with them in the future, because at the moment they see it as a cut thing. If we're saying we want to do early intervention and prevention, you're not coming in to see us as a service, then actually you know, they think they're being done, that they're being stopped having something. So how do we help to change that culture so they recognise this is actually positive?
Okay, two good questions. Callum, do you want to take the first part of that question, and Jenny, can you take the second part? Yeah. Do you want to just remind her of the first part?
Sorry, I was concentrating on the second part. I lost the plot. I think Kevin's story today was so powerful, and a number of you stood up in the room and applauded Kevin's story. I spoke to Kevin at the break to say, in terms of my local high school, and he said, well, I've been out there. But I think some of the things that we do in terms of AHP conversations is we have these conversations with our service users and their families, and maybe that follow-up isn't always there. So I think that I go back to the issue I made about what matters to you earlier on, and I think as AHPs, as health and care professionals, we think we are having a good conversation with our service users. But I would ask any of the AHPs in Fife who've done the Good Conversations training to say to you that we thought we were having a good conversation, but actually now that we've done the Personal Outcomes Good Conversations training, it is a totally different conversation we're having. It is around your hopes and dreams for the future. So if you think you're having a good conversation with your patients around breaking that intergenerational cycle, and what we need to do to change and transform how we're delivering health and care, then don't assume you're having a good conversation. And I really would urge you, there's a huge amount of work being done through AILIP, through the Thistle Foundation and others around good conversations. And I think if you haven't done the training, I would question whether or not as an AHP you are actually having a truly good conversation around people's hopes and dreams for the future.
Great, thank you. So Jenny, PAMIS is an organisation with big reach, a lot of influence. How do you handle things that might be perceived as a cut, as a transfer? What sort of advice would you give to policymakers about that?
That's really interesting, and I think that fits in with that sort of expectations and hopes and aspirations. And actually, I was going to sound really naff, but talk to them. What we found is that actually you think you've had that conversation, and I mean, I'm really passionate about the children and young people's strategy. I think it's absolutely fabulous, but we were in a situation with a set of families who did feel that their services had been cut, and actually they hadn't. I could see what the AHPs were saying, but the families hadn't had that conversation. They didn't know that what was happening was it was being developed and there was going to be early intervention. They didn't know how those teachers were suddenly going to be doing the activities that they thought their allied health profession was doing. And actually I think some of the teachers weren't that sure about how they were going to do it. The passion there to make it better is absolutely there, but we were just sort of saying, let's sit round a table when you're beginning to make these decisions and have those conversations, and let's be really honest as well. I think what we're picking up is that money's incredibly tight, services are tight, and families always feel that their services are being cut. They come in all guns blazing when we're working with them on empowering conversations because they've had to fight their whole life to get what they think their son and daughter deserves. They have an expectation. They know that their sons and daughters can do more than we probably know that they can do. So have those conversations, and if there isn't any money, be really honest. And if there isn't any money, we can sit round a table and we can think up other ideas. I love that idea of the positive communities. If we give communities the skills and the understanding, we can change the world. And can I just make one plea? We'll only change the world for our folk if we have the right facilities in those communities. And if you don't know what a changing place toilet is, please come and see us, because without that, our people cannot go out into their communities and they will never meet their dreams because they can't even go to the toilet. Sorry, had to get that in.
Well, we'll say, gentlemen here, just question number 2, just wait in the mic. Yeah, thank you.
I think we can't get away from some of the things that Peter showed, that in some ways there is money in the system. It's just not with the right people doing the right things to recoup some of these benefits.
So who do you take it from then?
Well, the question I'm not going to ask it. But, so I'm an engineer. Engineers in companies, they have a standard rule that 5% of their turnover is used for research and innovation and is pushed towards making things more efficient in the future. I don't see any of that budget for allied health professionals to change their service delivery. We have pots like the innovation and so on. And also if they do that innovation and they make a benefit to the company, that's reinvested in further benefit for them. But we don't have that in this system. We have a system where if you actually save money, people just say, well, great, that's brilliant, we can spend it on something else. And we don't get a steamroller going of improvement.
Some of our academic colleagues might have some views on that, but I'll see if the panels have got views in terms of how much we invest in terms of practice-based research, how much we get into the real sort of like evidence of what needs to change in terms of practice. Are we there yet? Have we got a lot to do? Fiona, do you want to?
I think we're not nearly there yet, and one of the things I think we do need to do is look at scaling up research. I think allied health actually have really grown in terms of what's happening with research and need to be absolutely commended for that. But there's something about, and I'm going to exaggerate, so please don't criticise me for this, I'm saying it for effect. Is the research about someone's personal preference, or is it actually what society needs? And how do we scale it up, and how do we then do something that can be taken across the country, not just in one particular area? Now that individual piece of research can be very important, but we need to look at where we're putting our funds and make sure that our research is best placed. I think we need to grow our clinical academic careers so that we can nurture that and take it forwards. And there's something about leadership. So if we're saying we know that we can demonstrate real change, then a business case can be made, and to say that these are the services, look at our track record of efficiencies. Yes, we'll give some up, but actually we want to shift, we want to change, we want to pump prime. It's not impossible at all to get to a situation where there can be support for innovation, can be support for research, and that money can be put in. I think where you fall down is if it's a belligerent, well, we can't change our service, we can't do anything forwards, and actually we just want more money for research and innovation. So I think there's something about real leadership needed to take it forwards.
Great, thank you. So we're going to have to start the process of winding up, and I think just before we do that, what I'd like to do is to go back to our panel, and you've got a significant group of people here, a significant set of leaders, a significant force for change. Give them one sentence to go off thinking about, which is really important to you, that you really want them to deliver. And Graham, we'll start at this side this time, so you don't get.
So if I've got one sentence, it would be: don't wait for someone else to solve your problem.
Okay, well done. Yeah.
And for me, it would be bold and outrageous in terms of think the unthinkable.
Fantastic.
Use your politicians. I know they'll all change next week, but use your politicians. Have conversations with your politicians around early intervention and prevention. It's not a quick win for them, but it'll be a hard conversation for you to have, so be brave.
And I guess mine would be partner with your family carers and the people who use services, because they're great influence, they're great educators, and they're fantastic partners.
Fantastic. So, colleagues, just before going, if I could just add one comment, I mean, it's been a great privilege of mine to be working closely with the allied health professional community, particularly through my colleague Elaine Hunter, and developing the dementia work in terms of connecting people, connecting support. I am inspired by this profession. I think it's absolutely the right profession to be leading so much of this, and I wish you well with this programme. I hope it really delivers the aspirations, and that we, across all the sectors, can work in partnership together. So, from my perspective, great luck and great work, Jackie. But can I ask you to put your hands together to thank our panel for their very open, warm and very thoughtful contributions.